Have you ever experienced this moment? Everything between you and someone close seemed fine. You talked, laughed together, even made plans for the future. But then, one day, they completely disappeared. No messages, no goodbye, no warning signs. And the most painful part is they never came back. Carl Jung called this phenomenon the departure of the highly sensitive. It's not selfishness, nor is it betrayal. It is an unconscious survival mechanism that even the one who leaves cannot control. Think back for a moment. Have you ever been abandoned without a single word? If yes, drop a comment with the word experienced, so I know you're listening with your heart. Jung discovered that those with extraordinary sensitivity, often called empaths, can endure hurt and toxicity in relationships longer than anyone else. They give, they stay silent, they convince themselves it will be okay. But ironically, the moment they smile, the moment they care the most, is often the very moment their psyche is silently collapsing. Until one day, their subconscious pulls the emergency brake, forcing them to leave like an emergency surgery, fast, decisive, without a single explanation. Imagine this. You wake up one morning and text your partner, "Did you have breakfast yet?" No reply. An hour passes, a day passes, a week passes. You call, the phone is off. You check the messages still blue, but they've vanished as if they never existed. You're in pain. You don't understand why. But for them, it wasn't an angry decision. It was self-rescue. While watching this video, try a small challenge. Recall someone who once left you without a word, or remember the time you silently walked away yourself. Hold that memory, because what Jung discovered will help you decode it all. Carl Jung called this phenomenon unconscious self-rescue. He believed it was dangerous, but also revealed the cold truth about how the human mind protects itself when every conscious boundary fails. Before we go deeper, let me ask you, what's more cruel, someone disappearing without a word, or someone staying only to let you slowly die in silence and toxicity? And this is only the beginning. In the next few minutes, you'll see the 3 stages Jung described: subtle signals, psychological pressure, and the emergency departure. And you'll understand why these people can never come back. Jung discovered that highly sensitive people, empaths, always have an invisible radar working inside them. It doesn't sound loud alarms, but only sends out very small, very subtle signals. You may not notice it, but their body and subconscious had been speaking long before the departure ever happened. Imagine you're in a relationship. The other person cracks a joke that makes you uncomfortable. You force a smile, telling yourself, they probably didn't mean it. They forget your birthday. You reassure yourself, everyone gets busy sometimes. They ask you for help with something they could clearly do themselves. You still do it, thinking, it's fine, I'll be generous. Each time, that inner radar trembles, but you silence it. You choose to cover up, to endure, to explain it away. Does that feel familiar? How many times have you turned off your own sense of wrongness just to keep the peace? Carl Jung called this the silent alarm. In their dreams, these people often see themselves trapped, chased, or struggling to carry a burden too heavy to lift. That is not just a dream, it's the mind screaming, something is wrong, get out before it's too late. While listening to me, try this. Recall a recent dream that left you restless. Maybe you forgot the details, but the uneasy feeling remained. Write it down. That may be the very silent alarm Jung spoke of. One of Jung's patients once said that for months she dreamed of falling into muddy water, suffocating, unable to escape. In real life, she still smiled, still loved, still did everything to keep the peace. But in her mind, the fire alarm had been ringing for a long time. And then, when she couldn't take it anymore, she vanished without a word. What do you see here? It's a frightening truth. Endurance is not always compassion. It can be a sign that a departure is approaching. This is only the first stage. But when the silent alarm is ignored, it leads to massive psychological pressure. And when that pressure becomes too great, What Jung called the second stage will occur: psychological pressure. When you ignore the silent alarms, the mind will not stay quiet forever. It begins to build pressure like holding a ball under water. At first, you can control it, but the longer you push, the stronger it bounces back, and eventually, it bursts. Carl Jung called this stage psychological pressure. Picture a friend in the office. He always smiles, always volunteers for extra work, always covers for others' mistakes. Everyone praises him as kind, but every night, when he gets home, he collapses on the bed, drained of all energy. He starts dreaming of being locked in a small room with no way out. With each dream, the room gets smaller. That is the subconscious, signaling the pressure is rising. If you don't escape, there will be an explosion. Have you ever felt like you were smiling at the whole world on the outside, while suffocating on the inside? In this stage, empaths often do something paradoxical. Instead of setting boundaries, they give even more. They smile more, care more, sacrifice more. To outsiders, it looks like, this relationship is wonderful. They are so patient. But in reality, this is the inverse boundary response. The more they are unconsciously wounded, the more generous they become consciously. Pause for a moment. Think about your most recent relationship. Did you ever do more when you felt the other person pulling away? Did you ever smile to cover up the sense that something was wrong? If the answer is yes, write it down. That could be the very sign of the psychological pressure Jung described. One female patient shared that for months, the more her partner controlled her, the more obedient she became. She cooked, cleaned, cared twice as much. To anyone looking in, it seemed like an ideal romance. But in her diary she wrote, "I feel like I'm carrying a mountain." That is the terrifying psychological pressure, silently building day by day. Ask yourself, is your kindness becoming your prison? And when this pressure exceeds its limit, the subconscious takes over. Jung called it the emergency override, the sudden unplugging, the wordless escape. There is an invisible limit, and when it is reached, everything explodes. Jung called this moment the emergency override, when the subconscious takes full control. To outsiders, it looks like a sudden, shocking disappearance. But in truth, it is an urgent psychological surgery. No warnings, no negotiations, only a decisive cut to preserve inner life. One morning, you wake up and decide to clean your room, but instead of tidying piece by piece, you grab all the clothes, papers, and belongings, throw them into a big trash bag, and dump it outside the door. No sorting, no explaining. You just know, if I don't do this now, I'll suffocate. That's exactly how an empath leaves, not out of anger, not to draw attention, but simply because their mind flips the survival switch. Do you find that terrifying? Have you ever experienced this sudden unplugging either as the one leaving or as the one being left behind? That someone can love you, care for you, and then one day vanish as if you never existed? Carl Jung once wrote, "When consciousness fails to protect, the unconscious intervenes to save the soul." This means that for months, even years, the empath's conscious mind tries to cover, endure, keep the peace. But once the energy runs out, the unconscious slams the escape button. I want you to try something right now. Recall a relationship you know you will never go back to. Do you feel short of breath when you think about it? Do you feel chills when imagining being pulled back? If yes, that is the emergency override, locking the door behind you. Jung once observed a patient who vanished from a long-term relationship. No fights, no warnings. When she tried to return, she had a panic attack, her heart racing, her body trembling. Jung called this the psychic recoil, the mind's violent pushback when forced back into an environment it had labeled deadly danger. In other words, returning is not just impossible, it's like forcing someone back into a burning room they just escaped. So, what is more cruel, to disappear without a word, or to stay and let both suffocate in the flames? This is why Jung said empaths leave not to punish others, but to save themselves. But the bigger question is, Why can they never return? And how can we recognize these signs before everything collapses? When an empath leaves, many of those left behind wonder, if we had just talked, everything could have been solved. Why disappear? But what they don't understand is this. For an empath, returning is not an option. It is impossible. Carl Jung observed this and called it psychic impossibility. Imagine a woman who has been belittled by her partner for years. She forgave again and again, even gave more love. Then one day, she disappeared. A month later, he texts, "I miss you. Let's get back together." She looks at the screen, her heart racing, chest tightening as if she can't breathe. She no longer feels love, only the sensation of being dragged back into a room filled with toxic smoke. Jung called this reaction psychic recoil, the mind's pushback, where the subconscious protects them by creating an instinctive fear toward the old relationship. Have you ever left someone, and just hearing their voice again sent shivers down your spine? If yes, comment shivers so others know you've felt it too. 3 barriers that keep them from returning. 1. Unconscious protection mechanism. Just like when you're poisoned by a certain food, your body never forgets. One whiff of the smell, and you feel nauseous. For empaths, the old relationship is that toxic food the mind has labeled never again. 2. Inner transformation. During separation, they restore energy, learn to set boundaries, and start a new chapter. Going back would mean burying their own evolution. 3. Truth revealed. Once outside the cycle, they look back and see clearly what was once hidden, the manipulation, the exploitation, the disrespect, and they know. Returning would be like stepping back into the trap they just escaped. While listening now, think of a past relationship. When you left, what made you certain you would never return? Write it down, as a reminder that you've moved forward, not backward. One employee shared, she worked for a boss for 5 years, enduring constant shouting and humiliation. One day, she quit without warning. Later, the boss called, offering a higher salary to come back. Just hearing the phone ring made her cry. Not from longing, but from fear of returning to the same hell. So, what do you think kills a relationship? Is it open betrayal? Or is it the silent cracks, piling up day after day until nothing can be saved? And here lies the ruthless truth Jung left us. Empaths don't leave because they hate you. They leave because staying means self-destruction. But there is something even more painful. Their very kindness, patience, and tolerance became the prison that made their departure so sudden. Carl Jung called this the ruthless paradox. The more sensitive, the kinder the empath is, the more likely they are to disappear without a word. Why? Because every time they feel hurt, instead of setting boundaries, they give even more. And that very act creates the illusion that everything is fine. A young man constantly cancels plans, forgets important dates. His girlfriend, an empath, doesn't blame him. On the contrary, she does even more. Prepares surprises, sends caring messages, forgives again and again. Friends look at her and say, "She's so lucky to have such a patient partner." But in reality, she is laying down the bricks for the invisible prison of her own making. Do you see it? Sometimes, the very moment you give the most is when the relationship is closest to collapse. Jung called this the inverse boundary response, meaning that the more unconsciously threatened they feel, the more gentle and generous they appear outwardly. The result? The other person believes everything is perfect. And when the empath disappears, the shock is devastating. Why? Everything seemed fine. Picture a child who constantly endures parental criticism. Each time they're compared, they study harder, behave better, argue less. The parents think, "Our child is doing well," until one day the child moves out, cuts off contact, without a single explanation. That isn't rebellion. That is an escape after years of kindness turning into chains. I want you to try something right now. Think of a relationship where you gave too much just to keep the peace. Did you feel more loved, or did you only feel more exhausted? Write down your answer. That may be the reminder that kindness does not mean endless sacrifice. Sometimes, kindness isn't light. It is a velvet-wrapped dungeon, where you lock yourself inside without realizing it. And this is the truth Jung exposed. The silence of the empath doesn't begin the day they disappear. It begins on the days they smiled in place of setting boundaries. But there is something even scarier. After the empath disappears, they don't just leave. They slam shut every door of return, and their disappearance becomes the mirror that reflects the truth back to those left behind. When an empath disappears, they leave no explanation, but their silence itself becomes a mirror, reflecting the true nature of those left behind. Carl Jung called this absence education, teaching through absence. A young woman walks away from a controlling relationship. She leaves quietly, with no message. Her ex has two ways to react. 1. Explode with anger and blame. You're ungrateful. You're cruel. You vanished like a ghost. 2. Sit down and reflect. What did I do that made her feel she couldn't breathe? Why didn't I see the signals earlier? Do you see? The disappearance forces those left behind to reveal their true nature. Do they care about you, or only about losing their source of emotional supply? If someone disappeared from your life tomorrow, how would you react? Would you try to understand why? Or would you only get angry about losing the comfort they once gave you? Comment your honest answer. It will reveal more than you think. A friend was always the emotional anchor of the group, always listening, always comforting, always helping. One day, that friend vanished, no replies to messages, no more showing up at gatherings. The group split in two. Some felt sad and asked, "Did we rely on them too much?" Others grew angry. "They're selfish. They abandoned us." Jung said that very reaction is the test. Do you see the empath as a human being or as a tool to supply you with energy? I want you to try something. Recall the last time someone left you, cut contact, or silently withdrew. What was your first reaction? Anger or self-reflection? The answer will tell you which side of the mirror you stand on. Here is the cold truth. The disappearance of an empath is not punishment. It is a test, and the outcome of that test reveals who you truly are. That is why Jung believed the silence of the empath can become a turning point of awakening. The one left behind will either grow or remain, forever trapped in anger and blame. Carl Jung believed that empaths don't always have to disappear in silence. If they learn to listen to the silent alarms and set boundaries early, they can escape the tragedy of sudden vanishing. A young woman once came to Jung. She always dreamed of being chaste, tired, and fearful. In real life, she was in love with a man who was controlling and judgmental. Instead of enduring until she exploded, Jung taught her something very simple. Try setting one small boundary. She told her boyfriend, "I need one evening just for myself." When he reacted with anger, she immediately understood. This was the signal, and she left, consciously, not in crisis. Do you see? Just one small boundary was enough to expose the true nature of the relationship. Would you dare to try setting one small boundary this week? Jung's suggested methods. 1. Recognize unconscious signals. If your dreams, your body, or your mood keep warning you with fatigue, anxiety, tension, that's not random. That's an alarm. 2. Experiment with small boundaries. Say no to a small request. Ask for more time for yourself. Don't over-explain, just observe the reaction. A respectful person will step back. A toxic person will get angry, manipulate, or mock you. 3. Track your energy. If after meeting someone, you feel drained instead of recharged, that's a clear signal. Right after this video, try writing down one small boundary you'll set this week. For example, I will turn off my phone after 10 p.m. Or, I won't take on tasks outside my main responsibility. This may be the first step to prevent you from having to disappear in silence. One employee shared, instead of accepting every unreasonable request, he began with one simple line, "Sorry, I can't take on this task." His boss's reaction? At first, irritation. But over time, the unreasonable demands decreased. Jung said, "Sometimes, once you dare to set a boundary, the world around you is forced to change as well." What do you think? Which is harder, saying no once or disappearing forever? Jung believed that when empaths learn to set boundaries early, they don't need to vanish. They can maintain healthy relationships without losing themselves. And this is the doorway to the transformation of an empath from someone easily wounded into someone who masters their own sensitivity. Carl Jung believed that empaths are not always victims. They can transform, grow, and turn sensitivity into strength. Jung called this the journey from unconscious accommodation to conscious mastery. The 5 stages of an empath's transformation. Stage 1. Identity crisis. A major loss, a breakup, or a painful departure makes them realize, endless tolerance doesn't protect me, it only drains me. This is painful, but necessary. The first awakening. Stage 2. Boundary experiments. At first, it's very hard. They feel guilty saying no. They fear being disliked, fear being called selfish, but slowly, they realize those who respect will step back, and toxic people will immediately reveal themselves. Stage 3. Trusting intuition. Instead of convincing themselves they are paranoid, they begin to trust the unease they feel. Jung called this the distinction between anxiety and a true warning. Intuition becomes a reliable radar, no longer silenced. Stage 4. Conscious choice. Now, they no longer give unconsciously. They choose who deserves their empathy. Their sensitivity is no longer a public well, but clean water reserved only for those who value it. Stage 5. Empathic mastery. This is the peak. They can both love deeply and set firm boundaries. Sensitivity is no longer a wound, but a superpower. Think of Maya Angelou. She left toxic relationships many times, but instead of remaining a permanent victim, she turned sensitivity into wisdom. She said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." That is empathic mastery. To love, but with awareness. Where are you on this journey? Stage 1. Just went through a shock and still feel lost? Stage 3. Beginning to trust your intuition? Or have you reached stage 5? Take a moment to reflect. Where do you see yourself? Choose one small action to practice today. If you're in stage 1, write down one relationship that drains you. If in stage 2, try setting one small boundary. If in stage 3, listen to your intuition next time someone makes you feel off. This is how knowledge becomes power. Remember, sensitivity is not a curse. It is a double-edged sword, and Jung teaches you to hold it like a warrior, not bleed from it. But the journey doesn't stop at the individual. Jung believed that when empaths master themselves, they not only save their own lives, they transform their families, communities, and society. Carl Jung believed that when an empath learns to master their sensitivity, they don't just save themselves, they become a path opener, creating waves of change in families, friendships, and even society. A mother who was once a victim of emotional exploitation spent her childhood being belittled. But when she had children, she learned to set boundaries and taught them how to say no. The result? The child grew up sensitive but not weak, and the transformation of one person opened the way for an entire new generation, one that knows how to love without self-destruction. Think about it. If you learn to set boundaries today, who in your family or circle of friends will benefit from that change? This means that when a sensitive person starts living authentically, the whole group around them is forced to change. At work, when you refuse unreasonable tasks, others slowly learn to take responsibility for themselves. In love, when you don't accept disrespect, your partner is forced to grow or to leave. In society, when you live with both sensitivity and firmness, you raise the standard of relationships for everyone. One employee once said, "When I started saying no, my team was annoyed at first, but then they began respecting my time more, and eventually, they also learned to say no to things that didn't matter." Jung saw it clearly. A mature empath is like someone holding up a lantern in the dark. That light spreads, not only saving themselves, but guiding others. Try writing down one environment you're part of: family, group of friends, company. How do you think that environment would change if you started living authentically and setting boundaries? This isn't just a lesson for you, it's the legacy you leave behind. Have you ever thought that your sensitivity is not just a personal burden, but the key to transforming the world around you? Jung believed that a mature empath becomes a pioneer of emotional intelligence. They prove that sensitivity is not weakness, but refinement in how humans connect. And their journey doesn't just stop at social change. It carries meaning for the evolution of humanity itself. We've walked a long journey together, from the silent alarms you usually ignore, to the crushing psychological pressure and the sudden unplugging, from the tragedy of kindness turning into a prison, to the transformation of the empath into the master of sensitivity, and finally, their pioneering role in raising the emotional standards of entire communities. Carl Jung gave us a truth that is both painful and beautiful. Sensitivity is not a curse. It is an evolutionary superpower. But only when you set boundaries, only when you trust your intuition, and only when you choose to give consciously, can sensitivity become true strength. Imagine this. You're holding a sharp sword. If you hold it the wrong way, it cuts your own hand. But if you learn to hold it properly, it can protect you and clear the path for others. Your sensitivity is the same. If you've ever left without a word, or if someone once disappeared from your life, leave a comment. I choose conscious boundaries. That's not just a comment. It's a commitment to your own evolutionary journey. And if you want to know the 3 clear signs that someone is about to vanish from your life, so you're never caught off guard again, stay tuned for the next video. Because Jung believed the signs are always there, you just haven't learned to read them yet. Hit subscribe, and remember to comment, I choose conscious boundaries. That will be the sign that you're not only watching this video, but also beginning your own journey of evolution with us. See you in the next one.